everyone. My name is Stanley Berry. I'm an engagement associate with Digital Promise, and I'm looking forward into diving into communicating with influence this evening with everyone, especially my host. We have a great host lined up today. So we're going to start with our purpose. We usually open up every meeting that we have to discuss our purpose and why we're here as a group. So, the Powerful Learning Community for Coaches brings together optimistic educators who are passionate about driving change for and from their schools. So, that's why we're here. That's what we represent. So, as we communicate with each other in this environment, we usually just like to set a couple of house rules, just for us to follow as we have these conversations. They tend to get passionate, so just some slight guidelines. So some community agreements that we have are: speak your truth responsibly, be mindful to remain muted if someone is speaking. We have a pretty intimate group, so I think we're going to be pretty flexible this evening, and listen to understand. So sometimes again these conversations come from the heart, and we have our own experiences that we bring to the table, but just keep in mind, we're all here to learn. Let's assume positive intention when we're speaking with each other. So, just to open the meeting a little bit, here are some reasons why effective communication is beneficial to coaches, because that's what we're talking about this evening. So, straightforward communication builds trust and understanding. Open communication creates conditions that are conducive for open discussion, objective analysis, and creative problem solving. And lastly, open conversations help to discover the true interests, priorities, and challenges faced by educators. All very important things as we get into our conversation this evening. So, uh, again, we have a pretty intimate group. We have some of our community managers here. We have some guests here. So, let's start with the icebreaker. What's your favorite way to communicate? Is it through stories? Is it through food? Maybe a playlist? And feel free to unmute. I can kick us off by saying one of my favorite ways to communicate are like playlists or mixtapes. I'm pretty famous for like putting together a playlist to set the mood or kind of just, express how I'm feeling at the time. Sometimes with my fiance, I even make her playlist to kind of let her know, what I'm thinking about her. So that's one of my favorite ways. But feel free to unmute. You can use the chat as well if you're not comfortable speaking out loud. We're gonna give y'all a couple minutes.
I'm with you, Stanley. I'm the 80s and 90s girl, so I always open with either Bon Jovi or Journey or something. But then I really strongly believe in the power of storytelling as well. So I think those really, if you can put a story, that sticks with in people's minds a lot longer. So storytelling and music.
Thanks for sharing that, Aggie. Yeah, I'm definitely a big storyteller as well. I love how, with music, it can kind of tell a story on its own. So I agree with that. Thanks for sharing that.
I definitely love telling stories.
Thanks for sharing that, Tara. In the chat, I see Jen. She likes to communicate in a literal way. The use of hands. I'm a hand talker, kind of. Oh, that's kind of obvious, I guess. I like to use my hands when I talk a little bit. And Matt says he likes to communicate through writing and creating. We just started a journaling thing here at Digital Promise, where we kind of, as a little team, we've kind of been exploring how to journal and kind of communicate in that way. And that's always pretty helpful, just to get your feelings out on paper. Teresa says she talks a lot. That's fine. it's good to talk. I think it's always good to talk a little more than you should. There's nothing
I
wrong
was
with
the kid that
over.
was moved because I was talking so much, but it didn't matter where you moved me because I was still talking. And then I just, even still at my age now, I just talk all the time, and people are like, I gotta go work. And I'm like, I'm not done talking.
Nothing wrong with that.
it's
Yeah.
it's what happens when you're the baby of 7 kids. You didn't get to talk when you were growing up. So you now as an adult, you need to talk.
That's true. Yeah, I'm the youngest out of my siblings as well. So I can definitely identify with that. And hey, how's it going, Patricia? Thanks for joining us. We're just having a little icebreaker. We're kind of talking about what's our favorite way to communicate, just a way to get into our conversation today. Feel free to unmute or use the chat if you feel more comfortable that way. All right, y'all. Well, appreciate you sharing. We had some good, some good insight into what you all like to do when you communicate. So without further ado, we can kind of get started with our speaker. So we have a very great speaker this evening. I'd like to present Erin West. She's an instructional technology trainer with our Vills team here at Digital Promise. And we're going to talk to her about how to communicate with influence. So without further ado, give it up some nice silent hand claps for Erin.
Thank you so much. And I love seeing some names that I recognize from some Bill's work. So hi, everybody. Hi again, if we haven't met. I am Erin, and I'm a trainer. I talk a lot. I've actually had to train myself not to talk with my hands. I'm failing right now. One time I was telling a story. My husband came up to me and I was on the phone and he held my hands and he goes, okay, continue talking. And I physically could not. I could not get a word out. And that's when I knew, like, maybe you got to work on that. So lots of little tricks as I fail right now, flailing about. But I am so excited to be here, to be able to talk to coaches, which is my passion. I was an instructional coach for a gazillion years. And before that, an elementary classroom teacher. So I have a special place in my heart for the work you guys are doing. And I am excited to dig in a little bit with our first bit. So to start off, let's just level set a little bit. What do you think it means to communicate with influence? What does that mean to you? And come off mute, we're a small crew, or throw it in the chat.
So Erin, for me, when I think about that, when am I in a position to influence anyone, and most often, right, it's through communication or it's through modeling, it's through, some sort of act like that. And so I think about having credibility. And I believe that the more credibility that I have, the greater that I have for the chance to be able to influence and impact whoever my audience is, whoever it is that I'm speaking with.
Thank you, Jen. And, when I do sessions, I give out imaginary gold stars. So I want to give you 7 imaginary gold stars for being the first one to jump in. Put them up wisely because, they're imaginary. They can go anywhere. Does anybody else want an imaginary gold star to share out what it means to them to communicate with influence?
I think it also, it means that when you communicate with someone that you have a level mind, that you are ready to receive as much as you're ready to give as well.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. And Matt threw out some imaginary stars to you, Tara. Matt, credibility is huge. You demonstrate it through your actions and the relationships you build. You guys, I love that we're level setting right here. So one more question I want you to think and respond to here. So what are some qualities or characteristics of people who are influential communicators? What do you think?
So it's kind of interesting. I work with someone who is a very influential communicator, and he is a quiet one. So what I mean by that is we'll be in meetings and he doesn't say much, but when he does, everybody listens. Unlike me, who talks all the time.
There's something to that, Belinda. Thank you. Teresa, you came off mute. I don't know if you want to
Yeah.
jump back on.
Yeah, I think like a major quality is that they need to, when they're communicating, they need to listen and ask those purposeful questions, and not and pay attention while they're like, for instance, if I'm talking to my best friend, that girl asks me the craziest questions. I'm like, were you not listening to what I was saying at all? Because you're asking me questions that have nothing to do with it, what we're talking about. So I would definitely not consider her an influential communicator, but many people that I've met through my role as a Vils coach, they're asking those purposeful questions when I'm communicating. So
Love that you brought in the questions. The chat's blowing up, being open-minded, listening +1 to the listening. So in this session, we're going to use the lens of communicating with support. And you guys are kind of coming to that organically. And I noticed that nobody mentioned effective communicators or influential communicators tell you what to do. There's not a top-down approach. As adult learners, we don't want to be told what to do. We want to come to that decision on our own. We want to explore it on our own. That's one of those qualities of adult learning. So we're going to look at communication being influential through the lens of adult learning, communicating with support, not telling it. And I feel like I'm kind of preaching to the choir. Organically, y'all are already there. So when we start anything out, don't you want to know why? Like, why am I even doing this? As a parent, as a teacher, we often tell our kids, I need you to do this because. Sometimes it's because I said so. But when we're working with adults, sometimes it feels like busy work. I don't know. I'm sure none of you ever have sat in a meeting that you're going, why am I here? Or gone to a training this has no bearing on what I do. I'm tuning it out entirely. Maybe I'm just thinking of my perspective because I was the worst participant in PD ever. I was the person back channeling, grading papers, like doing anything but participating when I didn't have a reason to. And it comes to our compelling why. Communicating with influence isn't about telling people what to do. It's about facilitating their learning, meeting them where they are in order to get them where they want to be, to move that practice forward. So you're really that guide on the side instead of that sage on the stage. If you've heard those sayings about how to facilitate in a classroom, adult learners are like kids. They want to know their why, and we want to respect their autonomy, give them agency. So when we're looking at the why, it's a strategy to gain the investment. If you can get them with the why, you can get them to the how. I love it. Yes, Aggie. So this isn't in my notes. This is total sidebar. But if you've ever struggled with ego or thought, I'm pretty good at what I do, I really recommend a book called Ego is the Enemy. It has nothing to do with teaching and everything to do with life. And I got the audiobook and have listened to it probably 3 times. And every single time I listen to it, I get something new. And it just reminds me that no matter how good I am at something, how effective I am at something, that's not the point. The point is growth. And the point is my personal growth and growing people on. So total sidebar, highly recommend that. I think his name's Ryan Holiday. But when we come back, I kind of hit on this one already. We look at adult learners. Adult learners need to know why. They need to have autonomy. They have to have a reason. And just think about any PD you've ever attended that you got something out of. That person treated you like an adult learner and not a patronizing, I'm going to tell you exactly what to do to solve your problems, because we don't have the answers. So when you talk with influence, when you communicate with influence, it can be hard in the role of a coach when we kind of know what they should do to fix whatever it is. And it would be super easy to say, hey, if you tried this, that might be successful. We need to get them to that discovery on their own. There are a lot of strategies and it takes time. In fact, for many, many years, I kept on my phone a list of question stems because I was bad at it. And I like to solve problems. So as a coach, I had to learn to step back, had to learn to not be judgmental and go, okay, how do we get there? What is it you want out of this? One of the questions that I ask my friends when they come to me and they want to complain, how can I support you right now? And it feels formal and weird, but it actually is what people need, because then they go, I just need you to listen, or I need help solving this, or I want to yell at you. Okay, I can do all of those things. I can wear all of those hats and be all of those people if I know how to support you. So in the chat is a great quote. It takes a lot of work to make something simple. Steve Jobs said it about the Apple interface. It is a simple design, but it takes a lot of back end work to make it as easy as it is. So when we talk about coaching with influence, communicating with influence, it's a lot of back end work. And it sometimes takes a delicate dance of skill. So there are times we want to be direct. Some teachers, some people need to hear, when I saw this, you actually weren't teaching the standard. Because if they don't get it with the indirect, how do you feel it went? What are you noticing? Respecting the adult learner, we go, is it okay if I tell you what I saw? If they're in a mindset to receive that information, and again, it feels super weird to say it, feels super formal until you get used to it. So are you in a mindset for some feedback right now? Okay, let me just tell you, this didn't hit the way you thought it hit. If that's the direct, not everybody responds to it. Sometimes the indirect works really, really well. How do you feel this went? What did you notice? Let's come back to those question stems. And if you're working with a teacher or you're talking to anybody and they're like, yeah, this went great. Like, this was the best thing ever. And it wasn't, not because of a judgment, but because the material was wrong, the indirect may not work. And you come from a place of love, you come from a place of growth, and you have to have relationship in order to have the direct conversation. Coaching with influence, communicating with influence, all influence comes from relationship. A lot of you guys kind of hinted at that when we shared, what does it look like? If you have a relationship with someone, Teresa, you mentioned your best friend, maybe not the best communicator of influence, but you could probably say that to her because you have a relationship. You'd be like, listen, I'm not coming to you with this. This is not a good fit for you, because that relationship is established. So relationship comes before anything else, and question stems are the way to go. You got to build it, build it, build it. Lots of factors impact communicating with influence and relationship. The better the relationship, the more influence you're going to have because you've put that investment into it. If you think about it in financial terms. So if you've got that idea, like you've got the relationship, you're ready to have that conversation, that partnership, you're prepared with your question stems, your ego is put to the side, the teacher is engaged and ready, you got to plan it out. So when we plan out our conversations, you may want to know where the conversation ends. You may have a really good idea of the solution or the steps that are necessary. You can't tell anybody. It's like your secret. So the best way to communicate with influence, the best way to build relationships is to have people think it's their idea. And that's where that ego piece comes in. You put it to the side and you want them to come up with the solution as you prompt, as you come up. This isn't in my notes, but I'm having this kind of vibe feel. I want to pause and talk real quick about judgment. And I remember sitting in a training one time and I was my bad attitude self. And I was like, great job. And the person doing it came by and said, you can't say that. And I was like, yes, I can. I was elementary. Like, you tell people great job. That is growth producing feedback. Like, we do that. And what she said was, that's a judgment. And I went, but it's good. We had a whole back and forth. It has stuck with me forever. Positive judgment is still judgment. So when we are in our role where we are providing communication with influence, where we want the person we're speaking to get to the solution on their own, good judgment is still judgment. So it's a lot of, how do you think that went? Not, that was great. What do you think? So when you hear that, now with that lens of judgment, you could think about how a teacher might respond. How do you think that went? Encourages deep reflection. I'm not giving you anything. How do you think? It's great job. How'd that go? Well, now they have a bias toward it was fine. And it may not have been fine, but we are all educators and we want people to feel good. So we provide that good judgment. Stanley, I'm sorry if I threw us off time with that, but hopefully that was what somebody needed to hear. And you can yell at me and fight me for it, because I mean, I push back on my presenter very hard. I'm all about it. I'm all about discourse. I'm loving the chat. We got some amen. Oh, Teresa, good. I'm glad you needed to hear that. Love, love, love. Okay. So bringing us back, we talked about the why. We built in, why are we here? Why do we want to communicate with influence? Because our teachers deserve it. They're adult learners. They deserve respect. They deserve the opportunity as experts to get to the solution. And that's a strategy, starting with why. Once you start with why, there's this beautiful thing we're going to explore in a bit. I think it's called the golden circle, and it has become how I think. It's the why, the what, and the how. Why do we need to do this? What are we doing? And how are we going to get there? If you can get buy-in with the why, you can get to the how. So one of those strategies is beginning with the compelling why. We've hit this over and over, the strategy of honoring the adult learner. You've got to treat them like the experts they are, because they are your colleagues and your peers, deserve that opportunity to solve the problem on their own, you know? And then we want to inspire folks. So in a little bit, we are going to go into breakout rooms. We're very small, so it'll be small breakout rooms to explore some of resources that are going to help you build into this strategy of communicating with influence. And I want you to start to think now, well, where do I want to grow? Do I need to focus? Do I need to dig deeper into the why? Do I need to dig into the adult learner? Malcolm Knowles, yes, I love. Chef's kiss to that. Or maybe you need some inspiration. You're like, I'm pretty good at that, but I need to work on my inspirational moments. Those are some resources that we're going to get to explore. So here's our how. We are going to engage in a gallery walk. If you're not familiar with that kind of protocol, in the classroom, in the physical environment, you would have ginormous chart paper and post-it notes. You guys would work as a group to gather your thoughts, and then everybody would walk around and look at it, reflect, leave growth-producing feedback. That's not a great job. We're going to do it digitally through a Padlet. So we've started with the why. Why do we need to do this? Lots of reasons. What are we going to do? We're going to dig into these strategies of communicating, to communicate with influence through compelling why, the adult learner, and inspiration. And how are we going to do that? We're going to do that through a gallery walk. So you're going to have time in the breakout rooms to do this. Now, this has an effect size of 0.82. Are you guys familiar with John Hattie? I see Jen nodding her head. Belinda did. You either love Hattie or you hate him. There is no in between. Like, there is just no, I'm okay with him. I love him and hate him because I love what he stands for, and the comments and the data, how it helps us drive our conversations. And I hate his books. If I need to sleep, I open up one of his books, Visible Learning, keep it on my nightstand. It is the driest read ever, but my goodness, it is good stuff. So if anybody is not familiar, just a quick bird's eye view of Hattie and his effect size. He's a statistician, I believe. So not a great creative writer. And it covers high impact strategies. And they found that some strategies have a higher impact on learning, on a growth in a classroom with students, with teachers than others. Interestingly enough, rote recall has a pretty high effect size, and that's something the pendulum in education has swung away from, and it's sort of starting to swing back. Look, Jen, I love your head nodding. I love that affirmation. I am loving that so much. You are filling my bucket. Thank you for bringing your authentic self to our time today. Love it. So I'm looking at Jen. I'm like, she knows rote needs to come back, but not all the time, because we've learned so much. So classroom discussion has an effect size of 0.82. Now, any strategy with a 0.4, the math specialist that I used to work with, I can hear her in the back of my head saying, it's not 0.4, it's 0.4. So if you're mathy, I apologize. I'm going to stick with the 0.4. The balance point, yes. So 0.4, it's the hinge point. Anything greater than that has a greater influence on achievement. Visible Learning is the book that digs into it. There are websites, the whole concept, what you can look at, the effect size as you're thinking and planning, what can we do to communicate with influence? How can I buy that in? So we will use a gallery walk, which has a effect size of a 0.82, part of our discussion. So before we jump into our Q&A, this is our reflection bit. I actually think I stuck pretty good to time. So how are you going to communicate with influence? This is going to drive your work in breakout rooms. You're going to explore the Padlet, beginning with the compelling why, honoring the adult learner, and motivating adults. And these strategies are going to help you grow your coaching practice. So thinking about that now, ask me anything. The floor is open. I am all yours. This is where you come off mute and talk to me.
So Erin, I've got a question for you. I'm always trying to add different tools to my bag as well. And so I'm just curious if you have any favorite go-tos that are more accessible in your back pocket when it comes to building that trust and building that credibility with your teachers, with your colleagues.
So Jen, I don't think you're going to like my answer, because it's not glittery and fancy, and it's not a trick. In order to get in with your teachers, you got to get down and do the stuff they don't want to do. So as a coach, there are so many roles, that resource provider, there's that big thinker, there's that data piece, and then there's that warm body. So at the beginning of the school year, when I have 10 million things I should be doing as a coach, all the work I need to do, I make an effort, especially with, I say it like I'm still doing it. I used to make an effort to get into the classrooms, especially of new teachers, and just be there. Sometimes they need help hanging bulletin boards. Sometimes they don't know how to turn on a projector. There's always something that my presence can help calm. And that's that paying in long-term investment, because at some point they're going to need me for more, and they'll know if they can count on me for the stuff that's blah, nobody really wants to do, but you're happy to do it, then they can count on me for the more important stuff. I wish I could be like, here, top 5 things to build relationships, but it's really just get in the trenches with them, being visible and available. Yeah, Matt, like I have also been in schools where in my county as a coach, you got to Mary Poppins. So you'd be in a school for 3 or 4 years, and then they would move you, and a new coach would come in. It helps because I, as a coach, will have strengths and areas of growth, and the next person may be strong where I was weak. So it's fresh for the teachers, but I have gone into schools following someone, and they're like, why are you here? Because I'm here to help. They're like, no, you need to go sit in your office. That's what your people do. No, we don't. They did. I'm not going to do that. So Jen, there you go. Sorry.
What do you, it's kind of similar to what you just answered a little bit, but what do you do with staff that is, very outwardly resistant to your help?
Oh yeah.
Even
So
if you are in the stitches.
you know what, I'm smiling because I've been in many schools that have that, and I wouldn't say I succeeded in all of them, but I use a horrible analogy in my head. So if you use this analogy, just forget my name and maybe don't tell anybody. But it's the wildebeest analogy. And in the wild, I think I came up with this. My kids were much younger and really into the wild krats and animals. So it was lots of animals. But in the wild, if a lion is hunting, it is not going to go for the ones that are moving at top speed. And it's not going to go for the ones that are all together. It's going to single out let's say they're hunting wildebeest, that is slower, that is unavailable, and it's going to go for that. So in my role as a coach, as macrobay as that sounds, I look for a teacher, one teacher I can get in with. A much nicer way to think of it is that there was a YouTube video about like one person starts dancing and then everybody starts dancing. It's a much nicer one than the wildebeest. So maybe think of that, but you find that one teacher, even that one PLC or that one department that you can even just be present in, because you also have to take care of you, your mindset, your self-care. It is hard to be in a hostile environment. If you're in that right now, I feel for you. Honestly, I've been there. And sometimes it gets better and sometimes culture is what it is and you can't fix cracks that are really, really deep. So you have to take care and protect yourself, but you can't stop trying to reach someone. So, when they let you, Matt, I just started showing up really with, it was an 8th grade math PLC. I showed up one time and I'm like, hey, let's talk about your test data. And then I just kept coming. And sometimes I would talk and sometimes I wouldn't. But eventually they started to ask me questions. And they were my wildebeest. I got in with them. Never hit history in 8th grade, never hit English in 8th grade. They were incredibly resistant. But I made a difference and was able to influence some math teachers, which is funny because I'm terrible at math. Yeah, exactly. The positive. That's exactly, Belinda, that's the wildebeest theory. So it's just macrobay. It's the one dancer theory. I'm just going to stop saying that. Really, really good stuff. Changing culture would be a great future topic, Stanley. And it would probably need to be, like a year-long thing because culture is. But I hope I didn't miss anything in the chat. And also, Stanley, I'm terrible with time, so you're gonna have to tell me to stop talking. But if there are any other questions, I'm happy to answer.
Nah, you're good. We still have a few more minutes if you want to keep going. Yeah.
I'm also really good at wait time. I'll wait y'all out. Yeah, Matt, I agree. I some coaches that I was with were singular school. I was always lucky enough to be at multiple schools, and so it's like, well, if you don't want me, and they do, I'm going to go there. And then there's the scarcity model. Well, but wait, if you're not here, then I want you here. Now you built up some interest. Yeah, I
There's also
agree.
the value of when you get to know a smaller group and they trust you, they share the tidbits, and then you can help them. So an example is I've been working with a group of special ed teachers in Africa. It's all done on Zoom. And they were telling me that they are really limited on supplies this time of year. Like they don't have glue and they don't, just certain things. And so I mentioned it to their administrator and the administrator's like, oh, that's not true. We have all kinds of stuff. And I'm like, well, just so you know, your teachers told me they didn't. So she put together a really nice basket and she brought it in like and surprised them for the next special ed meeting. You would have thought that she would have given them $1,000. I mean, it was amazing. And like the next week they came back and they're like, you're not going to believe us, Belinda. We got this basket. And I was just like, in myself, I wanted so bad to say, I know I told her, but I didn't, you know what I mean? Because I'm thinking to myself, okay, good coaching. Yes, you know. And so sometimes you just learn things and you can, you know, get in there in ways that you never expected.
I love that, Belinda. Thank you so much for sharing. And Patricia, your story in the chat. Yes, that word of mouth, it is sometimes so much more powerful because the relationship that the teachers have sometimes predates your presence in the building. As you've got to lean on what's established. I love that so much.
And I wanted to add too that sometimes when you're working with a teacher, it influenced the students. You know, as a tech coach, I would have the kids would make iMovies or brochures or something, and then they would ask another teacher, can we do that in this class? So that teacher will reach out to me to come in and help. So sometimes the kiddos are the ones that are craving it, and I love that, you know. Yeah.
Thank you, Aggie, for sharing. No, that's so perfect. You're right. Like that influence from the kids in the hallway talking about coming in, like, oh, that was so cool. We did this here. What are we doing here? Oh, we're just taking notes on paper. Okay.
Oh,
Erin,
and
I have one. Oh, Aggie, go ahead.
sorry, I was just gonna forgot. That's the wrong mute. The other reason why I unmuted was, um, a lot of when I start coaching in a new district, I try to link our coaching to our SLOs, students' objectives, and PPG's professional learning goals, because then I'm not, you know, that's if you're just starting and they have no clue about coaching. If I can help you, I'm going to help you with your goals, you know, sometimes that's all it takes. And if that's all I'm doing that year, at least I'm doing something and I'm not adding to their plate. So they're like, oh, yeah, please come in and help me.
I think, Aggie, you hit it key right there. When you pitch it as not adding to their plate, because so much of what we do helps teachers work smarter, not harder, to take things off the plate, to condense, because as coaches, we can kind of see that bigger picture where teachers really are in that grind, nose down. You've got to get through this to prep for that. That also sometimes causes resentment because there's a you don't understand what I'm doing. So that is another line to walk. But anytime you can tie like I can help you do this. We can prep this together in order to meet this goal. Or let's look at how technology can help us analyze data to make RTI groups, you know, response intervention, tiered learning through spreadsheets. We can do that as the role of an instructional coach. Love it. Jen, I know you came off mute. I want to honor that.
I just was going to pick your brain around what are your thoughts on that tightrope walking that we often do between administration and our colleagues. And so I'm just kind of curious if you have any shedding of any thoughts around that relationship balancing in order to meet everyone's needs.
Yeah, I think that is a delicate. The way that I would always explain it to my teachers is I'm a liaison to admin for you, and I'm a liaison from admin to you. I don't have a stake in it, but I'm here to help you guys talk the same language. And maybe sometimes things administration says make sense in their head, but they've been so long out of the classroom, it doesn't play right on teachers' ears. So being that translator, it has sometimes helped navigate. That only works though if you have good relationship with your admin. Otherwise, it looks like you're undermining. So we had, as an instructional coach, we would have weekly coaching meetings with admin. And the work of that meeting was, let me fill you in on some of the stuff I'm building in the background. A big rule with teacher trust is you don't need to tell the admin everything. Teacher time and topic were our things. hey, I'm going to tell you what teacher I'm working with. I'm going to tell you what we're working on, and when I'm doing it. But they don't need that other information. And that also helps when you make it clear to the teachers. You're not tattling, you're not administration, you do not have, any evaluative powers. You are just a teacher of teachers and not a teacher of students. So framing it in that way, it helps with that dance. Like I said, in those admin meetings, we would plan out what needed to be said in PLCs. If it needed to be said by me, it needed to be said by them. If it needed to be in an email, like drilling down that forward planning to make our PLCs productive. That was a big part of the teachers buying in. Hey, I sit in meetings with you guys and we just talk, and we talk, SOLs or standards. We talk, teaching strategies. We talk, how are you going to assess this? Those four questions. What do they need to know? How are you going to know if they got it? What do you do if they don't? And one other question that slips my mind right now. Clearly, I've been out of practice. But in those admin meetings, we're like, what is the big picture? Where do we need to go with our teachers? What's coming up? And are we on pace to get there? So walking that tightrope means a lot of meetings, a lot of work, and building trust with admin and your coaches. So again, Jen, I'm not giving you any good ones. I'm giving you lots of dig deeps and get your nose dirty.
It matches what is already in my head. I just always like to pick other people's brains to see what is your perspective, what were your experiences. So and so I'm going to circle back to what you said before. No judgment. There's no judgment on this end of the stick. I just wanted to pick brains.
Oh, it's fine. It is all good. I'm not checking it. So you heard it now. The translator piece has really been helpful. I'm just seeing in the chat, naming it. And that also helps with ego. When you're, again, like in this role, it's easy to get a big head because you're clearly in a coaching role because you did well in the classroom. And now you're ready to have a bigger influence. And it's easy to get a big head about it. But always coming back to that, they're experts too. They went to college too. They went through the same teacher prep as you did. You can learn from them. You're just in a different seat now. Put that ego aside. And, hey, let me just translate that through my admin lens. Admin, let me translate that through my teacher lens. You're right, Aggie. Not all teachers make great coaches, and not all coaches were great teachers. I think it goes both ways. Sometimes we promote up to. Sometimes I've seen coaches get that to get them out of students in areas with tenure. Well, let's put them here because we need someone more effective in the classroom. And that's a hard place to be. Love it, Laura. Let's see if I missed anything else here.
Can I just ask a quick question, if you don't mind? I heard you say about the feedback, and I didn't really think about that, positive or negative, but I know like when I meet with my teachers, they like me, I like to brag on them to admin, like I was in so-and-so, and I always ask them beforehand for permission, if it's okay if I share, hey, this was such an awesome idea, other teachers could benefit. Do you mind if I share it with them and with administration? Like I'm tight with my principal, like we have a good relationship. Is there anything wrong with that? Like,
not at all, because of your why, Laura. You're wanting to highlight them. You're not in a coaching conversation with them. So if you're in a coaching conversation and you want them to grow, or they've asked for feedback, you want to encourage reflection. That's when you keep your judgment out. But if you're like, I want to brag all about you, you did this thing, that makes everybody feel good. You coming to them and saying, I see this in you and I want other people to see it. This just feels good. That's an okay place to be, because you have to think about why you're having that conversation. Hopefully that helps, because I don't want anybody to leave thinking like we can't tell teachers they're doing a great job. Just we want them to be reflective in times of reflection.
I like that. Thank you. Because that's the biggest thing as a teacher. I reflected in my head, but not in a more formal way. And I think through coaching, I've learned so much from the teachers who put reflection as a big piece of their teaching. And I'm trying, like right now, that's one of my goals, to share that out more.
That's awesome. That is so great. Just on a completely unrelated but slightly tangential note about reflection as a classroom teacher, and something I have worked with coaches on and other teachers, is providing feedback and glorifying things doesn't always have to be the best. As a classroom teacher, I did my favorite fail, and I would highlight a student that got it wrong, but I loved how they thought about it. And so we as a class built a culture of celebrating failure because it showed you tried. And also there's good things in all of the failures. So if you solve a math problem and you solve it really wrong, but you're like, oh, I love how they solved this because I can see what they were thinking. They put here, here, and here. I can see where their brain went. Now you get people showing more work. You have like less anxiety about getting it perfect all the time. So when I would meet with teachers in a PLC, that's one of the questions I would ask, like, what tanked this week? And that leads to reflection, because tanking no longer is bad. Having a bomb of a lesson is no longer shameful. It's like, this bombed. How are we going to fix that? And now you can get to the real work of teacher growth, because you're not just seeing the shiny surface. You're getting down to what's real, that bedrock of practice and pedagogy to grow your teachers. Sorry for the soapbox. I get a little passionate about that. Okay, I think that brings us to a very natural end of the Q&A.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome. So let's share out now. Feel free to unmute, and let's discuss any aha moments or any interesting things that came up in the conversation, before we wrap up today. Feel free to unmute.
My aha moment was when Matt mentioned using podcasts to communicate your influence. So, I was like thinking, I never thought about that, but then I also know that emails and all those things are kind of outdated. Nobody reading that. So get along with what is going on. So that was a moment for me that I'm thinking about.
We talked about the value of like swivel and cameras and videotaping, and just the value of people seeing themselves on camera and using that as a reflective tool.
There's so much power in teachers watching themselves. We did a whole session on coaching through video and what that can look like when you get teachers to see, because we have so many biases and so many blind spots. I love that you guys discuss that, and hopefully you get some buy-in with some teachers to jump into that lens. Oh man, that's awesome.
Well, I'll just say I have acknowledgement of just leadership and partnership with people, the privilege it is to listen to and hear others share, and then either see yourself reflected or see areas where you can grow or see how you can take things back and build from it. So there's a real privilege and honor being in the small group and having the opportunity to hear from all of the participants. I feel very grateful for that opportunity.
That's so beautiful. Thank you. I was going to jump in as you're thinking about ways to communicate outside of email. I did a thing called Toilet Tech, and I had a sheet protector in teachers' bathroom stalls and would put a newsletter in that had some teaching strategies or some pedagogy or a QR code to go to something cool, or a video, like a QR code that maybe would go to a video of me talking through some technology piece, because there's a captive audience in the bathroom and everybody eventually goes to it. So thinking outside the box on how do you snag your teachers. Be prepared for awkward conversations though, because I had a teacher come up to me. She's like, I love what you told me the other day. And I was like, I haven't talked to you in a week. And then I was like, oh, you went to the bathroom. Okay, well, let's have that conversation. Yay. But that's a fun with podcasts, with email, with newsletters. That's another way to grab your teachers.
Yeah, definitely agree that those different mediums are very helpful. Do we have any more share outs before we start to wrap up?
I think one thing we talked about too is just be very intentional, and that's something I've been working on and I still need to work on. That we don't want to waste our time and be very intentional about what my conversation is. And you never know what people walk away with. So everything we say, not that you can't just have a conversation to build a relationship, but you never know what's going to stick with their mind. So kind of be intentional about, especially a coaching session, and what you want to get out of it, not or what the purpose of it is, not what you want to get out of it. But that's something I have to work on.
I love that. And that was a part of our journaling thing here at Digital Promise, just being more intentional and approaching things with intention. All right, y'all. Well, we have some good news to give you before we head out. We have some small group series coming up. And as you can see, we have some community managers here tonight that are going to lead those series. So we're going to give you the contact info so you can reach out to us. But here's a little bit about what you can expect. So Belinda and Matt, they're going to lead the Coaches Corner. And for that, they're going to discuss instructional strategies, inclusionary practices, coaching challenges, and planning for next year. We have Jennifer here. She's going to lead the How Do You Say small group series. And for that one, she's going to be guiding you all through exploring different ways we can leverage our words to improve our impact, sort of like what we've already been doing. So that should be great as well. Then we have Aggie. She's going to be doing the Reflect, Learn, and Plan series. So it's all about how to finish your coaching year strong and start planning for the new year. And John, who had to head out a little early, he's going to use podcasts to dissect different coaching themes over the few weeks that he's going to be holding his series. So we're going to drop in the chat our emails and, reach out to us if you want to sign up. We're trying to get folks to sign up in the next couple of weeks so we can get started. Each series is going to be about 5 to 6 weeks. And it should definitely be very insightful. So feel free to reach out to us and we can get you signed up. So lastly, before we close out, we have a couple of more workshops coming up in April on the 26th. We have co-creating relationships for change with Kayati Sanjaya. That should be just as great as this one. So look out for that workshop reminder and sign up as soon as you can. And then in May on the 31st, right after Memorial Day, we're going to have Surviving Your Coaching Day with Sarah Bordelon and Sherry Lofton. Sometimes it feels like you're surviving something serious, but don't worry, we're going to show you how to get through it. And when those emails come out, make sure you register as soon as you can so we can get you on the calendar. So I want to just thank Erin West. She was a great host, great speaker. Thank you so much for your time today. And, all the great discussions that came from us convening together. I want to thank our community managers for showing up, and being great facilitators of our conversations. Y'all are always great to have. And, thank you to our coaches. It's nothing without you all coming up and, having this community around the things that we really believe in and sometimes struggle with. But as we can see, we're not alone. And, together we'll get through it. So have a good night. Hopefully we'll see you next month and, enjoy your night.